I recall now, back in the day, discussing a halacha with someone. I thought it was a halacha, but it was a fellow who's had this more. I guess he felt that God appointed him to keep everybody else in halachic line. Like everybody has to follow the party line, whatever it is. That's the way you're supposed to do it. So
Why?
I, everybody has their hangups. That's what he felt. I think he still feels that way today. Well,
But that itself goes against Torah.
I know that, but whatever, it doesn't matter. So I remember discussing something like that, and he basically got into a little bit immature. It's like, oh yeah, well, I asked Rav Nevinsal this question. He said this and that. So what do you have to say about that? I said, well, I asked Rabbi Rabinovich this question. He said, X, Y, and Z. Says basically his response was, well, my gedolim are bigger than yours, which is something that actually you encounter quite a lot in this country, especially on election day. I remember the first time I went to vote. I came to Israel, and by the time that the first elections hit me, I'd already changed my address. But not enough so that Misrat Apnim made me leave my house in Jerusalem to go to nearer to my old house where I used to live to go vote that first election. And there are people on the bus trying to convince me to vote for this Haredi party. There were 3 Haredi parties from which to choose. I don't think I voted for any of them. At the time, I was still, I think, voting Likud for whatever reason. God should forgive me. Either way, I now realize I don't think there were any good choices at the time. But either way, that was the thing. You have to vote. Why? Because it got a little entertaining. My Gedolim said, my Gedolim are bigger than yours. Okay, fine. So that was his retort. And I'm thinking that, first of all, it could be that his Gedolim are bigger than mine, but mine shows sources for there's halacha. They don't just say, like, well, he's big, so he said it. Especially in this thing, like the issue we were talking about, you could actually see it in the Talmud. You could see it in the Rishonim. And that which he was telling me in Rabbi Nevitzal's name, you could not. So that's important. Okay. There was a talk this week about, I think, Ben Gvir, and then Rav Ariel called for the establishment of a synagogue on Har HaBayis. You heard?
I've heard.
Okay. Now, I'd just like to point out that I don't think they should stop at a synagogue. Of course, you're supposed to have a synagogue on Har HaBayis. It's the Knesset. Right, that's the thing in the Mishnah. It says that's where they kept the Sifrei Torah that the king and the Kohen Gadol would read when they had, public Torah reading. So,
wait, what would be the proper place to put a synagogue? We could do whatever we want.
I don't know, somewhere on Har HaBayis, so it doesn't really matter. Okay, not the Azara, but either way, people would pray all over the place. So, I think why stop at establishing a synagogue? They should build an actual temple, and a temple to the Lord, and the temple itself is the model for synagogues. Remember, synagogues are mikdashei me'at, right? At least in Chutz La'aretz. In Tanakh, the synagogues are called Moadei Hashem. Sometimes Moed means a set time for meeting, okay, a holiday, and sometimes a Moed means a place of meeting. So that's the old biblical word for synagogues. The temple is called Beis Tefillah Yikorei L'Chol Amim. The God's temple is supposed to be the international synagogue of all nations, right? House of prayer for all nations. So that's what it should be. Just putting the temple there, you already covered the synagogue thing. They didn't really have it that when people went to, let's say, the Temple Mount to pray, or the temple to pray, they just prayed right there in the Azara, right? Or outside the Azara. Wherever they were, there was a decent spot, they would pray, right? They didn't need to go to the synagogue. The synagogue at Lama Davar Domed, the synagogue in the temple, most people, when they go to the Old City of Jerusalem nowadays, they don't step into one of the proper synagogues to daven. Most people don't go to the Hurva or to the Ramban synagogue or other ones, right? Where they go?
The wall.
They go to the Kotel, which is just a big open space. Okay. I myself prefer, as you've seen, but then again, we daven at the Kotel sometimes when we can't go to our bayis. And sometimes it's better just to go to one of the synagogues in the old city because it's contained. There's more decorum. You're not interrupted in your Shemona Esrei by someone screaming Kaddish suddenly. It's a little bit difficult to daven if there's a lot of minyanim going around next to you. So that's what I call for.